America's deficit is always in the news. Of course, Republicans blame Democrats for spending uh, and other issues, while Democrats blame Republicans for spending cuts and not enough tax increases. So, who's right and who's wrong? We're going to meet someone who's got a very good take on this. He's author of the book, The Deficit Delusion: Why Everything the Left, the Right, and supply side tells you about the national debt is wrong. He's the editor at Real Clear Markets. He's a political economic editor at Forbes. He's the founder and president of the Parkview Institute, and he's an economic advisor to a major mutual fund. And he's asking you and I to contemplate looking at government debt in a whole new way. Let's welcome longtime friend of mine, John Tamny. John, good to see you.
Hey, Rick, thanks so much for having me on.
Yeah, I love your book title. It's very intriguing. And you say that politicians, uh, you say that the deficit will continue to grow because politicians on both the left and on the right both get it wrong. And the question is why there is debt in the first place. Very intriguing. I turn it over to you.
Well, you're out in California. Why does California have so much debt? Is it because Gavin Newsom's a big statist, big government loving politician? Or is it because California is more dense with billionaires than any state in the United States and any country in the world? I think the latter is the obvious answer. I mean, what if Gavin Newsom was governor of Kentucky? Would Kentucky have as much debt as California? It most certainly wouldn't because there aren't billionaires there to tax. And so what I'm trying to convey to readers is they have to think about debt in an all new way. If you have taxable access to the most productive people on earth and too much of it, naturally you're going to run up a lot of debt because people who have savings are lined up to lend to sure things. California is a sure thing because of the people who live there. And by extension, so is the United States.
So, why is coming back to your point you made, if California has the most dense billionaires in the country, as you say, in the world, why then isn't more income coming into the state of California from the billionaires?
Well, I would submit to you that if you look on an annual basis of who's coming in and who's leaving, the talent that's arriving is much greater than the talent leaving. I mean, let's ask the basic question. Someone earning $1 million a year, can they buy a nice house in California? No. I mean, they realistically can't. And we can't just say, okay, well, some politician did that because you and I remember there was a time when Malibu was kind of a lower middle class area to live. There was a time when we were younger that Santa Monica was where retirees lived because they could afford it. Most other parts were not affordable. What has made California so unaffordable isn't all just anti-development laws. It's the fact that talented people continue to build their businesses there. Just in the past week alone, San Francisco-based Databricks was valued at $100 billion. OpenAI was valued at $500 billion. What does that tell you? The talent in the state is remarkable, and it achieves on a level that no other U.S. state can claim. And I'm merely saying, because I'm against government spending, I think it's the central planning of precious resources. But it's no surprise that California would have a lot of it when it has taxable access to such brilliant people.
What should California be doing?
In my perfect world, and it's never going to be perfect, but in my perfect world, California would not have a tax rate for people because even if it had a 1% tax rate, its billionaires would pay in enormous fashion to the state every year. I think that there should be a limit to what anyone should pay.
Hmm.
And if you had that, California would have no debt. I would add to the Californians who aren't billionaires That would be good for all of you. A tax increase on Mark Zuckerberg is a tax increase on you because it's the state moving around resources, planning the allocation of resources. It's the state growing the size of government that we all pay for instead of it not doing it. And
Ah,
so I think we easily forget that just because someone else is paying the taxes doesn't mean that we don't aren't faced with the bill.
that's a good point. And when you say politicians get it wrong on both the left and the right, I assume this is precisely what you're referring to.
Well, yeah, absolutely. What do the left say? They say, well, if we want to bring down the debt, we've got to raise taxes on the rich. What do conservatives say? Well, we've got to cut Democrat spending, but see, every time conservatives are empowered, spending soars too.
Yeah.
Libertarians say that the easy fix is a combination of tax increases along with entitlement reform. Supply siders tell us we've got a even better idea. We'll raise your taxes by lowering them. And so what basically they're all talking about symptoms. They're saying if we can get the very people who ran up all the debt even more money, they'll suddenly become, quote, responsible about it and bring it down. But we've seen throughout the decades, you and I are around the same age, revenues have soared into states and the federal government for decades since 1980. And the predictable result has been more debt. And this is not even surprising. What takes in a lot of revenue now, and worse, what's expected to take in exponentially more in the future, can easily borrow. If you want to limit the borrowing, you've got to limit the inflow.
Very, very insightful, John. Your book, The Deficit Delusion, I assume it goes into detail into just this.
I'm sorry,
Your book, The Deficit Delusion, it goes into detail on this, I assume.
Oh, it does. Yeah, chapter by chapter, it makes a point. It starts with corporations and points out that corporations, debt is what they aspire to. Think about a company like Uber. When it sold itself, 20% of itself to a venture capitalist back in 2012, it sold 20% of itself for $11 million. Dollars. Well, why didn't it just borrow the 11 million? Well, it didn't borrow it because no one would lend to it. There was not an interest rate high enough for Uber to borrow that money, so they had to give up a big portion of themselves to a VC. Fast forward to the present, Uber's got a, a, a valuation of nearly $200 billion. Dollars. It's got over 11 billion in debt. Is that a surprise? No. When investors trust your future ability to take in money, they'll lend to you much more easily. This describes all companies, it describes all individuals, but crucially, it also describes governments. The US has 37 trillion in debt, but Russia's got 300 billion. Is that just because Putin is just a real, secretly, he's a big fiscal hawk? He wants to limit the tax that his government's spending? It has nothing to do with that. Investors don't trust Russia's economic future, hence, they will not lend to it. They trust our economic future because we're the most brilliant country on earth in terms of entrepreneurialism and enterprise. But they also trust us, and this is what should scare us, because the billionaires in this country are vastly overtaxed. If they weren't vastly overtaxed, investors wouldn't so readily line up to lend to the United States.
Do you have the ear of any politicians out there? Any elected officials?
Well, politicians are going to reject this outright because they continue to promote the fiction that if they can just have more money, if they can take in more from us, that they will solve everything. And that's what they've said from the beginning. I mean, let's not forget, in 1980, total federal debt was $900 billion. Dollars. Ask yourself what politicians and economists and pundits would have said if you had told them in 1980, guess what? By 2025, total federal debt will be 37 trillion. And you said they first of all say that's an impossibility. Second of all, they would say if it ever got to that rate, the money, the amount that Treasury would have to pay to borrow would be so substantial, it would have to be measured in 4 or 5 digits. Well, what have we in fact seen? Debt has soared over the last 45 years, but the cost for Treasury to borrow has plummeted, which is really quite logical because markets are incredibly smart. No one is able to access money easily. Money is the most ruthless concept on earth, and you're only able to borrow and borrow in size insofar as you've proven to the markets that you have impressive incomings now, but much more importantly, you have impressive incomings in the future. And so the real danger of this is that if we continue to promote the fiction that we have deficits because of not enough revenue, you're going to see debt continue to grow. You're going to see the size of government continue to grow precisely because Americans will continue to be wildly overtaxed.
John, in our remaining moments, of course, we have a current US president who is a businessman more so than a politician. What are your thoughts on President Donald Trump's economic philosophy as the president of the US?
Oh, it depends on the day. Sometimes you see instincts that you like. Uh, but it terrifies me to see investment by the federal government in private companies. The genius of the US stock market and of its economy is that businesses fail all the time. And so bad ideas are starved of capital so that good ideas can get it. I also think, because history is clear about this, that the genius of foreign trade is that we get to divide up work most advantageously. Americans love work because we've always been Hong Kong. And in being Hong Kong, we've gotten to do the work most associated with our unique skills and intelligence. And so when I see this idea of we want to tax this, we want to make it more difficult, and we want to do it to get the federal government more revenue, that horrifies me. Um, at the same time, sometimes I see instinct that I really like. Uh, you see it in his idea to privatize FEMA, to basically say that that states would do a much better job of handling difficult situations, which they logically would, because if you're in the state, you understand the threats much better that are endemic to your state. I like the commentary about, not because I hate the post office, but I feel like it could be much better. And so when he talks about why it should be private, I think I like broadly that there's an embrace of the genius of business, that you hear it from successful businessmen that they feel less under attack right now. But I just wish it could be combined with a broader comment that precisely because you think the greatest experts are in the business world, maybe leave the government out a little bit more.
Yeah, I am not surprised to hear you say that.
Yes,
Your book, the Deficit Delusion, available at Amazon.com.
it sure is. Hopefully in bookstores, but
Yeah. Okay.
with time, let's see.
All right. Well, we wish you luck on the book. We thank you for joining us. And yeah, we need more voices like yours out there with this message, John. We appreciate you joining me.
Funny, I really agree. Yes.
All right. Speak to you soon.
Have a great day. Thanks, Rick.
Back with more after this.